One thing that Israel hasn't lacked in the now 11 months since October 7th is blame and people blaming each other for what happened on October 7th, for the run-up to October 7th, for the mismanagement of the war that followed. This is one of the few issues that pretty much everybody in Israel is right about. When you hear somebody being blamed, they are probably in part to blame for everything they're accused of. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have been accused sort of subtly or not so subtly by Netanyahu of not being prepared, not giving him all the intel that they had. Um, by his supporters, they are more explicitly blamed. And on this channel, we of course ascribe the much of the blame to the person at the top, to the leader, to the person who wanted to be leader, who chooses to stay the leader, and I still absolutely stand by that. Netanyahu is to blame more than anyone, but the IDF is absolutely not innocent here. So both in the run up to October 7th, there was this delusion that Israelis in general lived under, that the Palestinians are somehow peaceful. What they want is to live in peace and security with Israel, and all we have to do is offer them a bunch of stuff that they claim they want, and then there will be peace. Many of us, if you scroll through the stuff on this channel years back, you will see many of us knew exactly who the Palestinians were, and I'm sure the IDF knew exactly who the Palestinians were. So there is a problem, and there has been a problem of, you know, it's one thing if you're a political activist promoting left-wing ideas by writing about it, by appearing on television, by protesting, wherever you protest. And it's a completely different thing if you are in charge of the defense of the country's borders and you apply the delusions of the protesters. And this seemingly is what the IDF did in the run-up to the war, is doing in how it's fighting the war, with the full endorsement of the leadership, and is more and more things are coming out now about how things are mishandled. And while they're coming out, there is also an attempt to prevent much from coming out. We're going to talk in general about some of this today. Presumably, there will be more to say in the future. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Daniel, your thoughts on how the IDF is handling the situation now and how it handled it in the run-up to October 7th.
Yeah, so this is a very complicated issue. And so one of the things that were sort of brought up to the attention of sort of the public recently, basically there's been this document that emerged that Hamas has been deceiving Israel and the US during the negotiations, basically sort of being, in a sense, unfaithful negotiators, that basically they were not interested in a deal, but were just sort of like keeping it on, unless the deal would mean surrender of Israel and allowing Hamas to exist further. And basically that this document has been hidden from Netanyahu, from the sort of like the government, from the people in power, by the IDF. There's been, sort of like pointing fingers. There's been like, oh, it just got sort of like stuck in a chain of command or whatever. Like it just didn't go through the proper pipelines, because apparently this has been known for a few months. There's also been some sources in the IDF claiming that the general staff are working to prevent October 7 investigation, or basically the conclusion of October 7 investigation. So the sort of assumption is there was some sort of failure of the general staff on October 7th. Um, then there's also, when it comes to the public sort of trust in the IDF, it also has been going down, even specifically when it comes to October 7 investigation, because again, we will soon be 1 year from October 7, and there's still basically the investigation of what happened has not been done. So there's a lot of problems in this way. And then, so I have been asking myself, like, basically, what should be the expectation of the IDF? Because in this case, we will definitely say that what they are doing is wrong. But then there is a question, basically, what is the proper role when it comes to armed forces? Are they basically just an arm of the government, and should do just whatever the government policy is, which definitely would make sense when it comes to, if Netanyahu is the prime minister, basically he should have a control over the armed forces, because he's going to be blamed for what the armed forces do. No one in the IDF is elected. There's no, there can be no basically public sort of outcry when something fails in the IDF. The only recourse they have is to whatever the government is. So they can only push towards that. So IDF acting independently in this way seems very wrong. And then there is also a question, although, well, I have more interesting things to say, but I'll kick it back to you if you have something.
Well, we'll let the audience decide if it's interesting, but yes, we will hear it. But I have a few comments as well. Jesse says they really don't charge people with treason in Israel, huh? And he mentions Halevi, the chief of what is the role in English? Chief of General Staff, and
Yep.
Gallant, the defense minister. Yeah, we were. I was thinking of doing an episode about Gallant, and I think we might do that separately. But I mean, it really is amazing. Look, Israel should have tried. I think several people with treason, including people who are very clearly and openly on the side of Hamas. Some of them sit in parliament. But yeah, on the books, treason is a crime in Israel, punishable by death. That has never taken place. Nobody's ever been executed for treason in Israel, but that is what's on the books. Right. So yeah, the Sinwar document. So a lot is we've talked about the Sinwar document, the document that shows how basically he plans to play the Israeli public. He's done that perfectly. The Israeli left protests every Saturday, according to his plan. But this document, if it really had been hidden so that because it causes damage to the cause of trying to remove Netanyahu, is absolutely not the role of the military and should be, whoever is responsible should pay with, at the very least, their job and probably some jail time. But then, of course, there's the other side, which was mentioned in some of the stuff we read in the run up to this show, which is it's not 100% clear that Sinwar wrote the document. It's found among his stuff, but it's not clear that it's him. But it is clear that this is what Hamas is doing because we see it and we saw it, with we've seen it throughout the war. I often refer to the stuff that we've done that we did right after October 7th. October 9th, I believe it was. We did an episode of, was it the Daily Objective, titled Why Israel Can't Win? And this is what we talked about, the stuff that is in the Sinwar document, the problem of the Israeli public not having clarity on the enemy, on how to deal with that enemy. And that problem, the military, the people in the military are part of the Israeli public, or they're part of the Israeli culture. They're part of many decades of the IDF being indoctrinated with just war theory, and they are acting according to that theory, and they are acting in a way that in which you cannot win a war. So first, before October 7th, if there's information that something is going to happen that could be prevented by preemptive war, you don't do that. Then when you're actually forced into war, you don't do what's needed in order to win because innocent civilians on the enemy's side. So yeah, Daniel, you had interesting things to say.
Yeah, because as some people might know, and I've been talking about this pretty much any chance I get, is basically my hatred of the parliamentary system. And we before every show we have a production meeting, so we talk a little bit, and we talk with Razi about basically there's been this vote basically on the issue of Philadelphia corridor, basically if it should be Israel's, in a sense, policy to keep it when it comes to negotiations. And he said, so there has been this vote, and I immediately went, because he said Yoav Gallant had voted against it. And I was quickly surprised because I wasn't sure. So I asked, wait, Yoav Gallant is in the parliament? I didn't know that. I thought he's just, in the government. And he said, no, he's in the government. And then I asked, wait, why is there a vote in government? And he's like, well, so they can agree on a policy. And I said, well, that's what prime minister is for. He is the one giving the policy. And the conclusion of that is this sort of problematic parliamentary system. Again, when you have these many groups, they sort of agree on one prime minister, but he's not. The biggest problem is he's not really the leader of the nation. He basically needs to keep his government happy, which when it comes to specifically this government, Likud is holding only 32 seats out of 120, and they need at least 61 seats to basically be able to rule, which means he needs the double of his own party. And again, he needs to keep his own party happy. It's not like well, I don't know specifically how strong party structures are in Israel, but generally what can happen is that party doesn't like who their own leader is and can do something against him. So he needs to keep his own party happy. And again, and that makes it many times it makes it really hard to really be angry at one person, because again, if you had sort of let's say the American system, you elect the president and he is president for 4 years, and that's it. There's nothing you can really do about it. You can, if there's something really bad, you can impeach him, but that won't really be a political process. That something really bad would have to happen. And yeah, whenever something like this happens, it makes sense that basically, in a sense, IDF can keep stuff, because again, who are they really beholden to? Because yeah, there is the prime minister technically, who, when we're talking about, as you mentioned, the chief of the general staff, that is an appointed office. So technically he can be taken out. But again, it's a political process. There's many parties in the government. Again, you have to agree on it. Instead of, it being really solely one person responsible, solely Netanyahu responsible, it is not really like that. So whenever stuff like this happens, it's really hard to say, like, what would I expect the IDF to do? Because again, this is the case when we would say IDF is clearly in the wrong. But let's say the policy of the government was to basically negotiate for hostages, or basically to basically surrender, and IDF was the one who actually pushed it to actually fought the war. Would we basically have the same problem with this? Basically saying, no, IDF should be beholden to the government. Ideally, yes, but again, these sort of, whenever you have an office that is being so politicized, again, when you have armed forces that are heavily influenced by politics, it becomes a very messy issue, and I think this is the case here too.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. There are a few comments in the chat that I want to address, but before that, I will say, yeah, as you mentioned, the Israeli parliamentary system and the electoral system of proportional representation, and the fact that Israeli society is has different factions, means that, yeah, the Likud currently does not have 61 of the 120 seats. No party in history has had that kind of a majority. The Likud will not have that after the next election, whenever that happens, although they are doing better and better. And Netanyahu, as we mentioned on this channel, has the Israeli left to thank for that, because they are doing the absolute best election campaign for him possible by siding with Israel's enemy and terrifying those in Israel who don't want the enemy to win and might overlook the fact that Netanyahu is to some extent also allowing that to happen. Um, and yeah, you mentioned even if he had a majority of 61, he has his own party to contend with. Yeah, Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, is of his own party. And yeah, so and he has problematic people of all sorts in his party. So yeah, that's it's a tough job, which is why, some of us would never consider applying. And if you applied and got hired and have been there for so long, it is on you to yeah to do better or leave. Um, Akira says that was one of the most depressing episodes ever, assuming he means the episode why Israel can't win. I remember we got a lot of backlash for it, understandably, considering this was 2 days after that terrorist attack. But in part, I remember on those episodes pretty much every day. I said, I don't say it that much anymore, but I said, I hope I'm wrong. This was my daily prayer to the gods of the Israeli government to do the right thing, which, I knew at the time was as effective as actual prayer, because I knew they're not going to do it. But again, I hope that hope has been lost. And I think the day after, or 2 days after, we did a show, How Israel Can Win. So we did offer a positive alternative, again, one that was not accepted by or followed by the leaders of Israel. Yo asks two questions to the wonderful Razi. That is how you get me to read non-super chat questions. So thank you for that. One, where does the money of super chats go to exactly? What is it used for? And two, don't you feel you're mostly preaching to the choir with these conversations? So exactly, well, it goes to the Ayn Rand Center UK and to our general budget, which pays for the different parts of running the YouTube channel and running other parts of the business, and things like Daniel's salary, my salary, this what I call the Ayn Rand Center UK World Headquarters, and other stuff. That the cost of running a business. And of course, any growth in that budget will also mean that money is going to be reinvested in the business. We are registered as a for-profit, but we absolutely want to spread these ideas as much as we can, which is why the second question, don't you think you're mostly preaching to the choir? So I think that is less the case since October 7th, because we have been discovered by, again, nowhere near as many people as we'd like to, but an audience of people who are not familiar with objectivism, and some of whom have told us that they read Rand, basically were inspired to read Ayn Rand because of our content, which I think, that's the absolute best compliment we can get. And yeah, most of our viewers are pro-Israel, but most pro-Israel people out there, I think, are still getting it wrong and are pro-Israel either for the wrong reasons, or don't have enough of the moral conviction to say Israel is right. So in the reality show that follows this show, we're going to be talking again about Dave Smith. Last time we talked about, or not last time, the time before last when we talked about him, we talked about his appearance on Piers Morgan, and he was joined by Emily Austin, who is one of the commentators out there who is pro-Israel, and she was so apologetic in her support for Israel. She's like, yeah, both sides commit atrocities, but I've seen others in Israel say, look, yeah, it's terrible when innocents die, and it is terrible when innocents die, but there needs to be clarity on, one side in this war being pure evil, and the right thing to do is to destroy that side, and then anybody who is truly innocent and happens to be harmed in that destruction is it is the evil side that is to blame for that. So yeah, I think there is a lot of room even within the pro-Israel movement, especially within the pro-Israel movement, for improvement on understanding why Israel is right. Um, There's a comment in the chat saying another video showing a rabbi for Hebron saying Israel will have 1,000-year war if that's what it takes. Yeah, that goes perfectly into the point that I just made. Yeah, there should not be 1,000-year war. It wouldn't take 1,000 years if Israel wanted to win this war and did everything it could. And if you're a rabbi, you have the afterlife or whatever the Jewish equivalent is.
Jews don't have afterlife.
Yeah, well then, but you don't really care. Your life is not what's important. If the people of Israel were truly selfish in the way Ayn Rand meant it, the way we mean it when we talk about it on this channel, truly wanted the best lives for themselves, they would see that the need for this war is the need to remove the threat as quickly and as decisively as possible, and that 1,000 years is not as quickly as possible and will not be decisive. And Israel will not win if it waits that long. It will not exist for 1% of that time if that's how it chooses to fight. All right, Daniel, any more thoughts on the topic or on any of the comments?
So someone in the chat was saying, how will Israel do against Hezbollah? And I have been asking myself that question a little bit because, yeah, Hezbollah is definitely much stronger than Hamas is. Uh, but whenever I think about it, y- you kind of have to remember there's not really a choice between like not fighting or fighting. There's a choice between, do you want to survive as a nation, or do you want to live in the fear for basically until someone actually does destroy you? To put it in like simple terms, if you wanna live, you have to work, and that's just what it is. If you want to survive, you need food to eat, and you need to get it somehow, and work is basically the way you do it in modern life. And so there is like a, well, what if it's hard to work, or what if I don't want it? And it's like, well, then you'll just die. There is no really that's the choice you have, and you have to realize that's what it is. So when someone is asking, how is Israel will Israel be able to fight against Hezbollah? That is a good question, but the question is, how will it survive if it doesn't fight against Hezbollah? That's really what it is. And similarly to how will Israel survive as long as Iran continues to exist? That it will always be there until you do something about it. And in this case, obviously America would have to join at least to do something about it. But that's basically the choice you have. Like, the choice is always between the life and death, and Israel cannot sleep on their choice and let it happen. And someone, I think it was Bonnie, who's asking, keeping people happy seems like an impossible job description. So when it comes to especially sort of like a leader of an executive part of the government, uh, which is again why I don't like parliamentary system. But basically, your job is to, the reason why we have representative governments is because it would be really annoying for every person to do a decision on every single thing the government does. It would be annoying, and it would be impossible, and you also wouldn't really be able to make a really informed decision without like making it double full-time job to learn on everything. So we have representative we elect people who should represent us. So ideally, the person you elect uh, might not represent your ideas perfectly, but sets out some sort of agenda beforehand, and you vote for that agenda. And that's sort of the best thing we have right now. So when it comes to Netanyahu, Netanyahu's job is not to keep everybody happy. It's to, the people who have chosen him specifically and the people he has formed the government with in this system, they should be representing the ideas of people who got them elected. Or if they want to get elected again, they should represent the ideas of the potential voting base. And that's the system we have, and I think it's probably the best thing we can currently come up with. But I'm open to more ideas.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, if that's the problem, Netanyahu's job is pretty much keeping people happy as he sees it, and that's his coalition partners. No, his job should be keeping people alive, and on that he's failed. So yeah,
Well, but then the fact is that the Israeli people don't want to fully defend themselves either. He
that's
is
true. Which
he
is
is
why
representing the ideas of those people.
Everybody watching should share this with anybody you know, especially in Israel, but anywhere else as well. And like, comment, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Yeah. By the way, you know who doesn't think Netanyahu should keep people happy or alive or anything because he doesn't think politics has, government has any place in the world? It's Dave Smith. Dave Smith, who also thinks I'm a brain dead moron. That was his tweet at me. We're gonna talk about in the reality show in a few minutes. We're going to talk about Dave Smith's guide to winning arguments. Spoiler alert, call people morons. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you in 3 minutes in the reality show.